Are you looking to run a horror adventure this Halloween? Then you're gonna want to stick around as we speak to an expert on that subject. Hello and welcome, heroes, to the Crit Academy. I am your host, Justin.
And I'm your guest, Phil Beckwith, the head honcho and the big cheese over at PB Publishing.
Yeah, I'm your co-host, Ian.
I'm your co-host, Brandon.
We hope to inspire you with creative content that you can bring with you on your next adventure. Alrighty, I am so excited. Phil, thank you so much for joining us today. We really do appreciate it. We know
Thanks for having me, guys.
Anytime. I'm a big fan of your content. So before we really get into, the meat and potatoes of why you're here, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do in the world of Dungeons & Dragons?
Yep, so I'm, as I said, the big cheese over at PB Publishing. So I create D&D 5th edition adventures more than anything else. Publications, but adventures more than anything else. I've got a few of them around here, as you can see. Best-selling DM's Guild and Drive-Thru RPG author. I'm most known probably for the Haunt series as well.
Mm-hmm. And we played two of those games, actually.
I am a huge fan, so I want to thank you again. If you guys are interested in checking it out, you really need to do that. Where is a good place for them to catch you to follow along with your exploits?
Yeah. Follow me on Twitter. It's the best place to go. I think it's like wherever you put the tag at PB Publishing 1 over on Twitter. It's the best place to find me. That's where I'm most active.
You can find a link directly to his content that we'll be discussing, which I cannot recommend enough, The Haunt, on our blog at critacademy.com. If anybody is available to toss that in the link in that channel, would be great. So, now, you write D&D adventures. Obviously, my favorite that you have run so far that I've really dug into is horror, which is the campaign theme that we're going to be talking about today. There's elements that make a Dungeons and Dragons game a horror theme, right? It requires a specific type of elements. So now, obviously, there's a few things that an adventure specifically needs. You need to include something terrifying, right?
Yep.
There needs to be tension, and there needs to be scares. So let me ask you, how does The Haunt capture that? What are some techniques you used?
Okay, yep. So horror, tension, and scares. Something horrific. Well, The Haunt, I think it all comes down to the atmosphere of setting up those scenes. So in the Haunt, the whole first half of the first adventure in that trilogy is mostly just setting up the scene and allowing the players to learn the history and the backstory of this mansion that they're walking through. So the whole bottom floor of this mansion is all them learning this backstory bit by bit, and they're throwing in a few monsters here and there, but it's not monsters at all really until you get higher up. So setting that tension early is important, and it's all about setting the mood, right? So for instance, they go and into this big ballroom, and there's this scene that's giving you sort of this ghostly apparition of these two having a dance, and then talking about this backstory of what's happened in the past, and the players slowly learn the history of this place, and that's just and it's really written in sort of dulcet tones, keeping it really low, and then when they move on and something happens, bang, all of this action happens, and all of this horror spills out at you. And because you've held back and kept the tension tight earlier on, it really just impacts moving forward when you do release that horror.
Yeah, and I think your adventures capture that really well. And one thing that I really noticed, I grew up with Child's Play. I don't know if everybody else grew up with that. So it was very reminiscent of my childhood nightmares when I had this, has this little doll running around terrorizing people.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun for me.
And look, keeping that tension as well. Like when you first meet the doll, it's not attacking you at all. It's just a doll, right?
Mm-hmm. It
A
starts.
lot of players put it in the backpack straight away.
That was one of my favorite things about this adventure. Everyone I've run this with, I always ask them, it's like, hey, what do you think the doll looks like? And it's different for everyone.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. So we talked a little bit about, the horror and the tension. Horror being, death and gross things, which are generally related to that. Then you have the tension, which is what's really pulling the players into the experience, right?
What's around this corner? What's around this? Is there something in that closet?
That's right, yeah.
Actually, I saw a meme that they posted in the D&D group of a wasp nest was built inside a doll. So,
and then we talk about the scares that really come from the release of the tension generally in an unexpected way.
Yes.
And you mentioned the atmosphere, and this really comes in place when you do attack the five senses more than anything else. Actually, before we got started, Ian had a really good example of this. If you want to share that with everyone.
Right, like one example is, I think it's a good idea to write out descriptions of areas you're going to go to ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you describe, the more you personify something, the better. Like, it's one thing to say you enter a dark tunnel. It's another thing to say you guys enter into the tunnel. The only light comes from your torch, but the darkness seems to drink it in as you proceed down into it.
Fuck that.
In words like drink it in, that personification.
Oh, I mean, look at Brennan's reaction just now, just from that.
I think that those are important, in my opinion, because you're making the world around them seem alive, even though, in D&D it could be, I guess, with mimics and shit, but generally making it...
Yeah, well, that's right. Well, that's one of the things I try. I think I personally try when I'm writing is to at least when writing descriptive text, at least describing 3 of the senses that they're getting at, not just what they see, what they smell, what they hear, what they feel, or if it's cold, the out is cold, or if they can smell the acrid, the acid down in the sewers, or they can. They feel the hairs on the back stand up. Like you said, all the senses, but including at least 3, I think gives a well-rounded description without being too much.
Too much.
Yeah.
Because there is.
You got to leave a little. You got to leave a little bit for the imagination as well.
Yeah, for sure. One of our listeners actually has a really good example here where he says when you describe something completely normal. But each time you describe it, introduce an inconsistency that will slowly leave little clues and unravel it as you go do it, which is really interesting. And I think in the haunt, when you first see the little doll thing, all you see is its eyes like peering through the window, right? Or at least maybe that's how I ran it. I guess I don't remember. It's been a couple years.
No, you're right. 2 little crisp blue eyes.
Yep, or just poking through, and that's okay. Their eyes, but you don't know to what. And then you walk in and you see this little, child's play creature thing sitting there, all innocently not doing nothing, and then you can correlate. Oh, a closer inspection, that the eyes are a little blue. And it just kind of goes hand over hand as you move through it.
That's right, and that's sort of bringing that tension back and back and back.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about tension for this particular game? It wasn't just that there was the doll. I put more than 1 doll into it, and only one of them was real, but they all had sapphire eyes.
Oh, like they're just planted throughout the house?
Yeah, like one of the rooms was just a dollitarium or whatever, where it's just a shelf of dolls with blue eyes, and they're like, I don't know.
Dude, and you could totally have them moving around and stuff. Like the other doll is grabbing them and moving them, so it looks like there's. Oh my gosh, that's great.
Yeah, just behind them, like moving their heads and stuff.
Then you gotta. That's where that perception would really come in. You see little scuff marks on the ground, that weren't there a moment ago, as you heard the skittering across the floor.
Building off that, I can see actually a strong argument for horror games in particular, and of course, make sure your players are okay with this.
Right.
Is make sure that. Instead of having the players roll for perception and all that, have the DM roll it behind the screen. So obviously you can get descriptions like, you swear you see something move in the corner of your eye, but when you dart that direction, there's nothing there.
Shadow people.
And that's interesting because you take away, because there's, no matter how much we try, we know that players, if they know they got like a 3, are going to respond as if they got like a 3 on the roll. So I do see that there is a benefit to that, because they're not going to have that meta knowledge to know how high they rolled to determine what they see, you know, and so that's really interesting.
It's the same, it's the same as what they did with Tomb of Annihilation, right? With the navigation rules, where the DMs rolling the survival check behind the screen, because otherwise they know that they've gone lost, right? It's the same deal.
That's a really good example. And we touched on a little bit with this little doll in this example, but beyond that,
sudden you get a real sort of backstory, or you learn something about him that gives you a bit of empathy for him, and you're like, oh, maybe it's not so bad, but then he's probably going to die. They're setting you up for this.
It's such a cliche in horror movies nowadays.
I'm not sure
you can pick people. It's like, oh yeah, he's done. Oh,
it flashed out for a second.
Yeah, he says he's got 2 weeks left until retirement. You know he's fucking dead. This is how it works in those movies.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Oh.
So.
But that just sort of leads into the tropes.
Okay, we're back.
And tropes are handy as well.
Yeah. So.
We got the ability to use the uncanny and unknown as a tool for fear.
What do you mean?
The uncanny means a situation, object, surroundings, or a person that is off from what it should be. It's a peculiar situation or sensation, like something in your gut that is telling you to run away. What makes dolls and clowns so creepy?
That's a really good example, because they're meant to be funny and adorable, but it's something that's yeah, right. It's something that is just off about them, and I think I hate to go back to the child's play, but it does it really good. It's meant to be a doll, but it looks like it's going to kill you, but it's not, because it's got like a damaged, face, or it's ripped apart. It just gives an unsettling feeling. And I think that you can apply that to a lot of inanimate objects, and especially in a game of D&D where you can make things come to life, like animated armor. I think that even makes it even more so.
Yeah, the fear of the unknown haunts us all the time.
Yeah.
Simply means a situation unfamiliar to us is playing out. We can end up dead, and a number of horrible, frightening ways, and information about our surroundings is key for security, which is actually something that reminded me as to why that video game Dead Space was so
terrifying,
successful. It's because the person who made it, he was also on sets of like Friday the 13th and all those old horror movies. And he specifically says the best form of horror and fear is the absence of horror and fear.
Yes. So when I was younger, I was playing the Doom. It was like the new 3D Doom, right?
Doom 3.
And whatever. And I remember, I will never forget this stupid hallway. I walked down this hallway with my little flashlight. I'm terrified. I was like, something's going to jump out at me. And so I'm looking around. I can hear things crawling and I get to the end of it, and I was actually devastated that nothing jumped out at me. Like, my heart was racing and there was nothing. Like, the expectation drove me.
That's right. It's like the original Alien movie, right? You don't even see the alien for like a good 2/3 of that movie.
Yep.
But it's all about the tension and looking around corners in dark places, and just seeing sort of the traces of the alien. You don't see the alien, so it's all that tension building up again, and it's the absence of the horror as well that keeps that tension there.
Right.
Like, going off of that, like, I don't watch horror movies in general, but in many of them I have watched, I've lost count how many times I'm like, hey, we're gonna get a jump scare in 3, 2,
and you can predict it.
Right. And that kind of, for me at least, gives me some of the tension, but there are some that I watched, like, I'm drawing a blank on there. What was the Stephen King movie in the hotel?
The Shining?
Yeah. Like, there was what, like, the best jump scare was, like, I did the countdown in my head, I'm like, wait, nothing happened.
You were let go.
And
then it happened. Oh, my time.
45 seconds later.
Popped up. I like that.
Yeah. But, it's clever.
But also, one thing that you always want to do too is we got to develop a spooky setting.
Oh yeah.
Obviously.
Jinky.
Like, building a horror setting should be a fun, creative exercise. And we all know the creepy elements of a place that can send chills down our spine.
Graveyards.
Yep.
Really?
Mansions, vacant houses. Looking at what we've gone
Basements,
over
man.
so far, though, you can start building a setting that brings the fear to life.
So how does so I couldn't agree with this more because I'm terrified of cemeteries, which is weird because I don't believe in ghosts. I've never seen one. I have no reason to believe that something's going to crawl out of the ground and attack me.
Yeah.
But it is so uncomfortable. What are some or settings that the Haunt trilogy takes place in that really brings out that that horror theme?
Yeah. So there's I guess there's two major settings in the trilogy. There's an old ancient haunted mansion, which you don't really know is completely haunted until you get into it, but you could probably tell from the outside. And people go into it knowing, right, so this place is haunted, so they already know how they should be feeling walking into this place. They're already feeling uneasy looking at it, right? And the other one is an old ruined sanitarium or old hospital.
Right.
That just sets my spine on chills.
Well, and I agree with the hospital too because so much darkness happens in a hospital, and so when you're in a place where it's dark and you know people have died here, I mean that's worse than the cemetery. At least the cemetery they arrive dead. Here in a hospital, people die and they come back.
This is what happens.
Every time I walk to a cemetery, it's like, oh, okay.
And then all the other stuff that sort of happens, right, to their bodies before they're dying as well, which is probably worse.
Right.
I tell you what, if I walk into a cemetery and I see a gravestone with iron bars over it, then I might be afraid.
Wow.
Because they're trying to keep something from coming out.
Yeah.
They're prepared.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm sorry, Grandma, I love you, but you did me wrong. I make sure you come back.
You put raisins in my fucking cookies.
Checking the bars.
Oh my gosh. So so a setting is certainly important.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not just the location, but the way the location is presented. You know, a house isn't spooky unless it's rickety and falling apart and dark and dusty and cobwebs, you know. So the dungeon dressing or the setting dressing is just as important as the setting. I mean, once again, if you watch any movies or read any books, the horror of the hospital when it's covered in bright lights isn't that terrifying. But as soon as the lights go out and all that's on is the emergency red lights, it becomes significantly more terrifying. So those are the things you really want to touch on.
Flickering light or something like that.
Oh yeah.
You know what's terrifying? Oh my god! I had to help my wife hang art stuff.
Helping his wife is terrifying.
Yes, that's terrifying. I had to help her hang all this artwork up in one of her schools, and we kept the lights off, so all we had was sunlight coming in through the halls. It's very, very. It's creepy. It's dark. There's no one there. There's lockers everywhere. And if you've ever played Fear, you have to walk through a school.
Makes me cry.
Every time I turn my back, I'm like, I think of that fucking game.
Yeah, there was. I remember playing that, and there was a little girl that flashed in a scene. But it was one of those things: looking through a window and then turning and looking through the same window. Those things really are opportunities for to really get the element of surprise and fear there. You know, especially when a party wanders through a hallway and nothing happens, and then they have to come back through the hallway and something happens because they're what is it? Their expectations is, oh, we already been through here, so there's going to be no issue. And I think I did that really in the Haunt. I think I did that where there is a chandelier that falls, if I remember right.
Yep.
But I didn't have it fall right away. They passed through that area a couple times before it finally just crushed somebody. They're like, why didn't it fall before? Like, that's a good question. Is something following us?
So that should have been stable.
You know, I remember reading a few articles for the demo for the game PT, which was supposed to be a prototype for Silent Hills. And apparently everybody described, like, if you want this like perfect horror tension, this demo seemed to nail it. And hackers, when they tore that file apart, found out like the main monster, they actually had it following you the entire time.
That's terrifying.
So you were always being followed.
Dude, you could totally get away with that with like a what is the invisible stalker, right? That's kind of its shtick.
Yeah.
But instead of it just outright attacking you, it pushing and moving and pulling things to instill
Bumping
that.
into you.
Yeah, that's I love it. Which kind of
So it's like Jaws. It's like Jaws, right? When the sharks come up and bump them and they're like swimming in the water, but they don't see it.
yes.
They just been hit by something, right? So that's another sort of form of terror there, I think.
Fear of the unknown. Yeah, what was that? Touch my leg. I know when I'm in the ocean, I hate going in the ocean.
Yeah, me too.
Actually, like one thing I can't run through my head was like, let's say like the players describe marching order, and you of course describe like, yep, you hear the footsteps, and like you say, like tell each individual player what they hear, and then like you hear you guys march forward, you hear footsteps behind you. Wait a second, I'm in the back of the line. Does that make any sense?
or messing with their senses, you know, you hear footsteps over to the right, and then you feel something brush up against your neck from behind, and that just sort of sets off conflicting senses. I think is a good one too.
So that leads us into our next kind of talking point here.
That's building a significant threat. To build tension, our killer or monster or ghost needs to be a serious threat. This is the case with most tabletop RPGs in the genre, but it's important to reiterate this point of heroic games as well.
Oh yeah, and I feel like this can become more and more difficult potentially the higher level your characters are.
Yeah,
it's like, oh no, we're stuck inside this haunted dimension door.
I'm out. Planes walk.
It's something that I absolutely love about the Haunt. I haven't checked out the...
Or polymorph like the big giant mouse into a squirrel.
I haven't checked out the second Haunt yet, or the third one.
Yeah.
But in the first one, yes, every creature in there is a major threat to the players, and not once do they ever see it coming.
Yep.
That's what I like the most about them.
Can we just? I just want to show everyone this for a second. This is so you've had 3 of these, and you just released your special edition book here, the Haunted Trilogy. It's very difficult for anybody that doesn't know to get physical books on DM's Guild.
Yeah.
So kudos to you for achieving that.
Thanks, man.
I know that takes a lot of work.
Oh, or Garwin. Oh, even better.
Yeah, it's been in the making for a while.
Tell the second to last person in the line they say don't hear anything behind them. The wizard was taken by a face spider.
Yes, I approve of this message. So actually, I guess we only got one more point on our notes before we get in, because I do want to talk about some of the stuff that you've done in here that I think is really clever and really unique. That's unique to this book as far as I've seen. I mean, I don't own any book that's similar to it. So we mentioned the build a significant threat. This ties in with don't be afraid to kill your characters.
Player characters.
Yes, characters. Player characters, whatever character, any character, because that also steps up the level of fear. Because a good example in the Haunt, when I ran it, you go through you see the little vision that happens in one of the dining room or something, and then there's a place where I don't remember if there was already a weapon there or I just placed a magic sword, but there's a zombie beholder.
It was,
and
in the pool.
I had a player who was gung-ho on about getting that thing, and because the other players weren't willing to leave them to die, even though it was due to their own, incompetence, I guess. I don't know the right word.
A different player died from that encounter.
Yes, another player died from it by the disintegration ray thing that I used. And that player was always mad at the other player because he only died because the other player wanted a weapon.
And would not retreat.
Yes. But that just shows, once that happened, they're like, all right, maybe we should go somewhere else.
This place is dangerous.
Right.
Now, this does, to me, double down on something I always think is important to RPGs in general, but even more important with horror games. Your actions have consequences.
Yes, absolutely. That's super, super important. And I think that really becomes out in horror themes more so than regular D&D style games.
Yeah.
And there was one for my players is on the second floor. when they realized that there was such a massive threat, because they took care of the beholder problem because they had their own strategy and tactics. It's like, okay, that was pretty smart. That worked. When they got upstairs, there was the ghost, if you remember correctly.
I do.
The person who found the body got possessed like that. She just snagged him. What they do? They go to the laundry room where there's that big vat of water, and they try to drown him.
Time to drown, biatch.
And then they can't get him to release, so the cleric, I think, they had create water.
Create and destroy water?
Create, destroy water. They got rid of the water, and after the ghost noticed the water was gone, they screamed, did psychic damage to him, let go, ran over the stairs, unpossessed him, and threw him down the steps.
That's awesome. I love that.
It's
brutal. And they're like, fuck.
Or a good way to mess with a player's perception senses is make one player in particular think that they're surrounded by monsters, and they start attacking them.
Yes.
But it's actually the other party members.
I ran an adventure where I did that. I restructured the mass suggestion spell to be more like mass fear.
Yeah.
And it created basically the what is it? Phantasmal
Force?
No, the other one. Phantasmal Killer.
Yes.
Which is basically the psychic, you see your worst fear. And it
you
turned
made me feel like a complete dick one time. I cast that on somebody.
I don't remember.
It was a giant.
I still don't remember. I play so much D&D, I'm sorry.
When I cast it on like the fire giant's wife.
Oh my god, yeah, you're such a dick.
I'm the dick.
Well, I was role-playing that. Anyway, so the other thing I want to touch on is that to do horror, there has to be... Don't be afraid just to set... We talked about the setting, but don't be afraid to make the players where the players are physically at. Setting the atmosphere, which Phil touched on briefly when we started, with dimming the lights and having creepy music, and those are all things that really, really help fill their imagination with these thoughts. And because of that, don't be afraid to include a more physical aspect to the game. So when I ran the Haunt, I had pre-worked out with my wife that I would call her at a certain time. There's a part in the adventure where you're climbing up the stairs and there's some pounding or something coming from the end of the hall on the other side of this door. And so when they were creeping down the hallway step by step, they're worried, they've been running into this little demon devil doll thingy, and they found a flesh golem in the basement and some shit, and so they're getting kind of curious. So I had texted her. I was like, "Hey, I need you to get out here." And so, if for those who don't know, the show studio in my office is separate from the house. So I texted her. She came up to the outside of the door of the room we're in. All the lights are dim. We only have candlelight. And then when I basically, she could hear me through, and I says, as you guys approach, a loud thunderous bang, and she started slamming on the door, and they all jumped out of their seats. And so to me, cool. You can do more than just using words to describe the scenario. You can get more physical with it. Don't make anybody uncomfortable, though.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I would say if they peed themselves, I would count that as a win.
Well, it depends on what kind of uncomfortable you're talking about, too. I mean, it's one thing to mention to your players, like, hey, I am going to run a horror game. I will screw around with your emotions a little bit. That's what we're going for.
Yep.
But as I mentioned before, I had a DM in one game who actually screamed at the top of their lungs like an ear-piercing shriek. And it was so loud, it actually made me physically hurt my ears. And I kind of want to punch the guy, not gonna lie.
I've done something similar with an air horn under the table. So.
Yeah.
There's definitely a line there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's absolutely a line, yeah.
So now I want to talk more about your book, because there's something very specific about this that really separates it from other things. But before I do that, is there anything you want to talk about that's in it that we should cover that really helps and really helps people run the great horror adventure that is The Haunt or something similar?
Yeah, look, I think you touched on it before with the setting the atmosphere is a big thing. I think I put it in the first few lines or at least the first page of the book. It's just setting the scene, or setting the room up. Use dim lights, use candlelight. That'll bring the whole experience into the table, into the middle of the table, and keep it between yourselves, the players, no distractions around. The darkness beyond the table is not there, and that really just brings it all in and really sets that tone, that sort of dulcet tone, which you can then boost up whenever you want. Like you be talking in really hushed tones while everyone's in at the table, really focused in what's happening, and then bang, you've got a jump scare there, ready to go. You know, just slam that table, and they won't be expecting it. And that'll just set the heart going. That'll set the tension, and that'll set the tone for the entire game.
Yeah. And you really do a good job of providing guidance on those in the book as well as in this episode, so thank you. But there's some stuff you did in here that I want to talk about because I want to know how you came up with the idea. First of all, you have customized character sheets for your adventure, which I think is awesome. The little creepy doll staring at you is a terrifying thing to look down at every time you're looking at your character sheet. So kudos to you with that. But the thing you did...
Yeah, that was a good friend, Dante, who put that together for me. He's an absolute champion, really, really good. So yeah, he did a really good job on that.
Yeah. And something I'm actually seeing on some posts, just because it's now October... You're seeing a lot more Halloween or horror themed posts in general, especially in D&D groups. And one post I just read actually pointed out something that I actually pointed out in chat the other day, which is werewolves can't hurt each other in 5e since their claws are neither magic nor silver, and they're immune to non-magical bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing.
That's how they keep themselves from wiping out themselves in a fight.
And I just think that's something to keep in mind when you build creatures in general or run a horror themed setting.
Yes.
It's like, oh no, these werewolves are fighting each other. They can't hurt each other, you idiot.
So the thing I want to talk about and I want to ask you about is you put in here special sheets that track the encounter and have the monster stat blocks. Have the monster stat blocks and everything on like a page, which is just so cool. How did you even come up with that idea?
I really just wanted the book to be grab it off the shelf and you've got everything you need other than your friends and your dice. So in this book, you've got everything pretty much. You've got your maps, you've got your minis, you've got your encounter tracker or your initiative tracker. It's got initiative down one side. You've got we've got each monster in there, and that's I made one of those. I filled out one of these sheets for every single combat encounter expected in the entire trilogy. So you've got a big thick lot of the encounters, and they're designed to be used as a textbook to use at the table in that book. And now I know a lot of people aren't going to want to write in their book or cut out things from their book, but it's designed for that, right? So so they're used to be so you can track notes, so you can track HP on those sheets at the table. It's got everything you need all on one page, ready to go for every single combat encounter. It's got a separate one.
And what's even cool is you have some that like if this encounter only had a ghost in it, you have blank spots you left here that you can fill in your own monsters if you want to enhance the combat. Which once again, dude, this is awesome. So one thing that we'll talk about it here in a minute, but in one of the adventures we just wrote, one of the things that I hated about all the books I have is all the monsters in the appendix. So I'm constantly flipping back and forth, and it drives me bonkers. Now, I do understand that makes it easier to find, but in the same token, I'm using it right here. This is where I want it. And so being able to either scan this or print it off or just rip it right out of the book and sit it on the table for easy reference is fantastic and very clever. Not to mention the paper minis.
Look,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, and that just leads into being able to run a great horror game as well, right? You don't want to be breaking immersion by flicking through a book. You want to have it all right there ready to go. You want that flow just to keep going, because you're setting that scene, and it's all about that atmosphere.
Yeah, I love the paper minis that are in here. So can you tell us a little bit about those? People can see. But...
Guys, one of them.
Yep.
What's that?
Held up one of the paper minis made up in front of the camera.
Yeah, I was trying. It's oh shit! I'm failing. Things. But there it is.
Yeah, look, that was the artist that made those is Paper Golem. So go check him out on Patreon, I think, is his best place, or Twitter. But he's awesome. So I've seen he's made a whole heap of paper minis for a lot of the official hardcovers.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he's a fellow Aussie as well. So I got in touch with him, and he was able to come on board to do all these paper minis. So basically, I've made we've put into the book every single unique monster. So if there's five maniacs, we've got 5 maniacs in one of the appendixes that you can just cut out and use at the table. So we've got one mini per each individual monster throughout the entire book. So you've got like heaps and heaps of these minis to put together, but they're ready to cut out and fold up and put straight onto your table.
Awesome.
I wanted everybody to be able just to have that experience and not be using, say, a coin for a ghost or whatever. I wanted them to have a mini that they could put down as part of purchasing the book. I wanted them to have everything that they possibly have that you could get from a book to make that experience as special as possible.
And obviously, you did put like perforated like pages on there, and obviously not everybody is like comfortable with like tearing actual pages out of the physical book, but that doesn't mean you can't scan it. That doesn't mean you can like print it from the PDF. What have you?
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So I offer a PDF version as well, and and I offer if you buy the hardcover, there's also an option to buy the hardcover with the PDF at no extra cost.
Nice.
Of course, I know that people aren't going to want to cut out the books as much as it's designed for that. They're not going.
It's an excellent marketing ploy, by the way. Kudos.
Yep.
What's that? Sorry, mate.
Excellent marketing ploy. Hey, you can cut these out, but since I know you won't, here you go. You can get the PDF too for a few extra dollars.
You get the PDF for free as well. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Right.
Oh, okay. I would have put it on for another buck. Like, another buck. Anyways, so. I'm a greedy bastard, apparently. Anyways, I love the haunt. I love running horror. And I think one of the reasons I invited you on is because I think your adventure really nailed it. No matter how many times I run it, that theme comes across. So if you're...
Look, big shout out to Travis Legg as well. He helped me write the second and third modules in the trilogy. Yep. And he did a fantastic job with a lot of his stuff as well. That's in there. So he did a lot of work on that as well.
Wonderful.
It just occurred to me that we didn't touch on the fact that don't be afraid to use like props or other tools. Like if you're out playing in person, you can like dim the lights, or you can use like music, soundboards, what have you.
We did talk about that.
Must have been in chat. All right. All right. Like a fun one though is like play a heartbeat in the background on low volume.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Right, and as you ratchet up the tension, increase the heart rate.
Oh, fuck you.
Really cool one I like to use is quite a funny one. It's the SpongeBob SquarePants theme slowed down by 800 times 800 or something like that, and it's fucking horrifying.
I'll have to check it out.
Go look it up on YouTube, and it is so unnerving. And it's just the perfect background sort of ambience, not even music, it's just ambience.
I thought you were running a horror theme. Why is this titled SpongeBob SquarePants?
Yeah,
don't worry about
it. That's right. But man, have a look at it. It's
I will.
Cool.
All right, that'll do it for our main topic. Before we move on to our unearthed tips and tricks, we have a shameless plug. We've spent talking about how awesome the haunt is. Now we want to talk to you about something we're working on.
Shame.
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 One of the best parts about role-playing games isn't just the fantastic battles, it's the memorable locations that they take place in, and the interesting NPCs that our heroes encounter.
We are so excited to announce the Extraordinary Expeditions that launches on Kickstarter on October 12th.
Yay! Extraordinary Expeditions is inspired by one of my favorite adventure themes, Dungeon Delves. Modular adventures that can be grabbed from the shelf and ran with little or no prep at all. The adventures are written in such a way that everyone at the table gets to experience their favorite pillars of roleplay. Oh yeah.
The first adventure from Extraordinary Expeditions is called Far Touched, and you all get it free right now. on our homepage at critacademy.com.
It's true.
Assuming the wife has fixed the link, because I just checked it and it wasn't working. So, to be determined. You can also head on over to rebrand.ly/extraordinary-expeditions. She says she fixed it. You're good to go. So please consider picking it up, checking it out. I really, a lot of work's gone into this. I want to thank RJ Productions, who's also partnered with us to do this. So hopefully you guys will like it. If you're looking to top off not just the creepy horror theme with the Haunt, but Far Touch deals with a lot of alien far realm type stuff, which is just creepy in and of itself. So consider checking it out. It is free. If you do like it, please leave a rating or review and help other people find it, and maybe back us when the Kickstarter goes live.